The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone streets of central London as Sergeant Thomas Mitchell adjusted his red tunic and straightened his bearskin hat. At 28 years old, he had served as a royal guard for 6 years, protecting the monarchy with unwavering dedication. His polished boots clicked rhythmically against the pavement as he made his way to his assigned post outside Buckingham Palace. Thomas came from a military family. His father had served in the British Army for 30 years, and his grandfather had fought in World War II. Following in their footsteps felt natural to him. The honor of being selected for the Queen's Guard was something he never took lightly. Every morning he put on his uniform with the same pride he felt on his first day. The Royal Guard duties were demanding. Standing motionless for hours, maintaining perfect posture regardless of weather conditions, and ignoring tourists who tried to make them laugh or break character required incredible discipline. Thomas had mastered this art. He could stand statue still while chaos erupted around him, his face showing no emotion, his eyes fixed straight ahead. On this particular Tuesday morning, Thomas noticed something unusual. A group of suspicious individuals had been loitering near the palace gates for over an hour. They appeared to be conducting surveillance, taking photos of security positions and timing guard rotations. Their behavior raised red flags in his trained mind. As a royal guard, Thomas was not just ceremonial. Behind the traditional uniform and seemingly rigid stance lay a highly trained soldier. He possessed advanced combat skills, weapons training, and situational awareness that rivaled any elite military unit. The public often mistook the guards for mere tourist attractions, but they were elite soldiers entrusted with protecting the royal family. The suspicious group began moving closer to the palace entrance. Thomas maintained his position but mentally catalogued every detail about them. Their clothing, body language, and coordinated movements suggested they were not ordinary tourists. He activated his concealed communication device to alert his commanding officer about the potential security threat. Within minutes, plainclothes security personnel began positioning themselves strategically around the area. The surveillance was so subtle that the suspicious individuals remained unaware they were being watched. Thomas continued his duty, appearing unchanged to any observer, but internally he was on high alert. The group suddenly scattered in different directions, which was a classic diversionary tactic. Thomas knew something significant was about to happen. His years of training had prepared him for moments like this. He remained at his post, but every muscle in his body was ready to spring into action if necessary. As the morning progressed, the situation escalated. Intelligence reports suggested a coordinated effort to breach palace security was imminent. Thomas received orders through his earpiece to maintain normal appearance, while staying prepared for immediate response. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than usual, as he realized he might be the first line of defense against a serious security threat. The palace grounds buzzed with invisible activity. Additional security measures were being implemented without alerting the public or causing panic. Thomas knew that behind the scenes, dozens of highly trained professionals were coordinating to ensure the safety of the royal family and the thousands of tourists who visited daily. Standing at his post, Thomas reflected on the oath he had taken when he joined the Queen's Guard. He had sworn to protect the monarchy with his life if necessary. Today might be the day when that oath would be truly tested. The morning that had started like any other was rapidly becoming one of the most challenging of his military career. Detective Inspector Sarah Collins had been investigating a series of high-profile thefts across London for 3 months. The perpetrators were sophisticated, well-organized, and always seemed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Their latest intelligence suggested the group was planning something involving the royal family, but the details remained frustratingly unclear. Sarah had 20 years of experience with the Metropolitan Police, specializing in organized crime and high-security investigations. She was known for her methodical approach and ability to connect seemingly unrelated pieces of evidence. Her team had been working around the clock to prevent what they believed could be a major security breach. The investigation had led them to monitor several individuals with connections to international crime syndicates. These weren't petty thieves or opportunistic criminals. They were professionals with military backgrounds, advanced technical skills, and access to sophisticated equipment. The threat level was unprecedented in Sarah's career. Early Tuesday morning, Sarah received a call that changed everything. One of their surveillance targets had been spotted near Buckingham Palace, moving with purpose and carrying what appeared to be reconnaissance equipment. She immediately coordinated with palace security and deployed her team to the area. The Metropolitan Police had a complex relationship with royal security. While the palace had its own highly trained protection units, certain situations required collaboration with local law enforcement. Sarah understood the delicate balance between maintaining public safety and respecting the unique protocols surrounding the royal family. As she arrived at the scene, Sarah could see the tension in the air. Palace security was operating under heightened alert status, though they maintained the appearance of normal operations. Tourists continued their visits, unaware that a major security operation was unfolding around them. Sarah coordinated with the Royal Protection Team to establish surveillance positions. Her officers were dressed in civilian clothes, blending with the crowd of tourists and street vendors. The goal was to monitor the suspects without alerting them to the police presence. The suspects were more sophisticated than anticipated. They used counter-surveillance techniques, changed appearance frequently, and communicated through encrypted devices. Sarah realized they were dealing with individuals who had received professional training, possibly from military or intelligence backgrounds. Through careful observation, Sarah's team identified at least 6 individuals working in coordination. They were mapping security positions, timing patrol rotations, and gathering intelligence about access points. The operation had all the hallmarks of a professional reconnaissance mission. The breakthrough came when one of Sarah's undercover officers managed to get close enough to overhear a conversation. The suspects were discussing a timeline that suggested their main operation would begin within hours. Sarah knew they couldn't wait for more intelligence. They had to act immediately. She contacted the palace security commander to discuss intervention options. The challenge was neutralizing the threat without causing public panic or compromising ongoing palace operations. They needed a coordinated response that would catch all suspects simultaneously. Sarah assembled her team for an emergency briefing. They had identified the suspects' positions and communication patterns. The plan was to move in coordinated waves, ensuring no one could escape or alert others in their network. Timing would be critical to the operation's success. As they prepared to execute the operation, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility. Any mistake could result in a major security breach or public safety incident. She reviewed the plan once more, ensuring every officer understood their role and the importance of precise coordination. The decision was made to begin the arrests immediately. Sarah gave the signal and her team moved into position. What happened next would test the relationship between local law enforcement and royal security in ways no one had anticipated. The arrest operation began at exactly 11:47 a.m. Detective Inspector Collins and her team moved swiftly through the crowd, targeting the 6 identified suspects simultaneously. The coordination was flawless initially, with 5 arrests proceeding without incident. However, the 6th target proved to be more challenging than anticipated. Suspect number 6 was positioned near the palace gates, dangerously close to the royal guard's posts. When plainclothes officers approached him, he began running directly toward the security perimeter. In the chaos of the moment, pursuing officers lost sight of the specific threat he represented. Sergeant Thomas Mitchell saw the commotion developing, but couldn't abandon his post without direct orders. Royal Guards are trained to maintain their positions regardless of surrounding events unless specifically commanded otherwise. He watched as uniformed police officers joined the pursuit, creating a scene that was rapidly attracting public attention. The fleeing suspect made a critical error in judgment. Desperate to escape, he ran directly toward Thomas's position, apparently believing he could use the guard post as cover or create confusion. What he didn't understand was that approaching a royal guard aggressively was considered a direct threat to royal security. Thomas reacted according to his training. When the suspect came within striking distance and appeared to be reaching for something in his jacket, Thomas broke from his ceremonial stance and subdued the individual with swift, professional efficiency. The takedown was textbook perfect, demonstrating the combat skills hidden beneath the traditional uniform. However, the pursuing police officers arrived seconds later and witnessed only the aftermath. They saw a man in civilian clothes being restrained by someone in a distinctive red uniform. Without understanding the context or recognizing Thomas as a legitimate royal guard, They made an assumption that would trigger an unprecedented crisis. Officer James Peterson was the first to reach the scene. He was relatively new to the force, having joined just 18 months earlier, and had never worked cases involving royal security. To him, the situation appeared straightforward. A person in costume had assaulted a member of the public. Release him immediately. Peterson shouted at Thomas, who remained in position securing the suspect. Thomas attempted to explain his status as a royal guard, but the noise of the crowd and the stress of the situation made clear communication impossible. The misunderstanding escalated when Peterson called for backup, reporting an assault in progress near the palace gates. He described the situation as a person in a royal guard costume attacking an innocent bystander. This information was broadcast across the police radio network, reaching dozens of officers in the area. Thomas found himself in an impossible position. He couldn't abandon the suspect he had apprehended, as the individual posed a legitimate security threat. However, he also couldn't prove his identity quickly enough to satisfy the arriving police officers. His radio communication with palace security was being drowned out by the chaos. Within minutes, 4 police cars arrived at the scene. Officers surrounded Thomas and the suspect, demanding explanations and treating both individuals as potential threats. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control, and the crowd of tourists was growing larger and more agitated. Detective Collins arrived just as her colleagues were placing handcuffs on Thomas. She immediately recognized him as a legitimate royal guard but faced her own challenge, convincing her fellow officers to step back without compromising the arrest of the actual suspect. The scene was becoming a public spectacle. Tourists were taking photos and videos, uploading content to social media in real time. News of a royal guard being arrested was spreading faster than anyone could contain it. The situation required immediate intervention from higher authorities. Thomas maintained his composure throughout the ordeal, despite the humiliation of being handcuffed in full uniform. He knew that palace security protocols were already being activated, and help would arrive soon. What he didn't anticipate was exactly how dramatic that response would be. The suspect, meanwhile, was quietly celebrating what he perceived as a successful diversion. The arrest of the royal guard was creating exactly the type of chaos his organization had hoped to achieve. Little did he know that his capture had already triggered security responses that would make escape impossible. Inside the palace security control room, Commander Robert Harrison watched the situation unfold through multiple camera feeds with growing alarm. Harrison had served as head of royal protection for 12 years and had never witnessed such a breakdown in coordination between his forces and local law enforcement. The arrest of Sergeant Mitchell triggered automatic protocols that Harrison had hoped never to use. When a royal guard is detained or incapacitated while on active duty, it signals a potential breach of palace security that demands immediate and overwhelming response. Harrison reached for the red telephone that connected directly to the military command structure. Code Red Alpha, he spoke into the secure line. Royal Guard detained by civilian authorities. Immediate response required. The person on the other end acknowledged without question. Within seconds, emergency protocols that had been planned for decades but never implemented were set in motion. The Queen's Guard operates under the authority of the British Army, specifically the Household Division. When one of their soldiers is unlawfully detained while protecting the monarchy, it becomes a military matter with national security implications. Harrison knew the response would be swift and decisive. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Davies received the alert at his office in Wellington Barracks, less than half a mile from Buckingham Palace. As commanding officer of the regiment currently providing palace guards, he was responsible for the welfare and protection of every soldier under his command. The detention of Sergeant Mitchell was an attack on his unit. Davies had been expecting this call for years. Every officer in the Household Division trained for scenarios where local authorities might interfere with royal protection duties. The response protocols were clear, decisive, and designed to demonstrate the military's commitment to defending their soldiers and their mission. Assemble the quick reaction force, Davies ordered his aide. Full combat equipment, immediate deployment. The quick reaction force was a specially trained unit of 30 soldiers kept on constant standby for exactly this type of emergency. They could be mobilized and deployed within minutes. The soldiers receiving the mobilization order dropped everything they were doing. Training exercises stopped mid-drill, administrative tasks were abandoned, and off-duty personnel were recalled immediately. Every member of the unit understood the gravity of the situation and the importance of their response. Private Williams was eating lunch when the alarm sounded. He had joined the regiment 6 months earlier and had never experienced a real emergency deployment. As he grabbed his equipment and ran toward the assembly point, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about his first operational mission. Sergeant Major Thompson had 25 years of military experience and had served in combat zones around the world. He had been expecting this moment for years, knowing that eventually civilian authorities would overstep their boundaries regarding royal protection. His job was to ensure the response sent an unmistakable message. The quick reaction force assembled in record time. 30 soldiers in full battle dress, carrying assault rifles and tactical equipment, formed up in the courtyard of Wellington Barracks. Their appearance was intimidating and professional, designed to demonstrate the military's serious commitment to protecting their own. Lieutenant Colonel Davies addressed his troops briefly. "One of our brothers is being unlawfully detained while protecting the crown. We are going to retrieve him and restore proper order. This is not a drill, and this is not negotiable. Any questions?" The silence that followed spoke volumes about the unit's readiness and determination. The convoy of military vehicles left Wellington Barracks with sirens blazing and emergency lights flashing. The sight of armed soldiers racing through central London in broad daylight was unprecedented in peacetime. Civilians stopped and stared as the convoy passed, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. Commander Harrison coordinated the military response with palace security. He ensured that all royal family members were secured in safe locations, and that tourist areas were being prepared for potential evacuation. The situation was escalating beyond anything in recent memory. The Metropolitan Police Dispatch Center began receiving calls about military vehicles racing through London. Supervisors scrambled to understand what was happening and why they hadn't been notified of a military exercise. The lack of communication between different agencies was creating additional confusion. Detective Collins, still at the scene trying to resolve the misunderstanding with Sergeant Mitchell, received an urgent radio call from her supervisor. "Sarah, what exactly is happening at your location? We're getting reports of military deployment heading your way." Collins looked around at the confused police officers and growing crowd, realizing the situation was about to become much more complicated. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and the distinctive rumble of military vehicles became audible over the London traffic. In less than 8 minutes from the initial alert, the full weight of British military response was about to arrive at Buckingham Palace, transforming a simple misunderstanding into a confrontation that would be remembered for years. The first military vehicle arrived at 12:03 p.m., exactly 16 minutes after Sergeant Mitchell's detention. The armored personnel carrier pulled up with a screech of brakes, followed immediately by 2 more vehicles carrying the quick reaction force. The sight of 30 heavily armed soldiers jumping out of military vehicles in the heart of London created instant panic among tourists and bystanders. Lieutenant Colonel Davies stepped out of the lead vehicle in full dress uniform, his medals gleaming in the afternoon sun. His presence commanded immediate attention from everyone in the area. Police officers who had been confidently managing what they thought was a simple arrest suddenly found themselves facing a senior military officer backed by an elite combat unit. "I am Lieutenant Colonel Davies, commanding officer of Her Majesty's Guard," he announced in a voice that carried across the entire square. "I demand the immediate release of my soldier who has been unlawfully detained while performing his sworn duty to protect the crown." The words hit the police officers like a physical blow. Suddenly, their simple arrest of someone they assumed was a costume troublemaker had become an international incident involving the military, the royal family, and protocols they had never been trained to handle. Detective Collins stepped forward, trying to maintain some semblance of order. "Sir, we were responding to what appeared to be an assault. We weren't aware this individual was an active duty soldier." Her voice betrayed the stress she was feeling as she realized the magnitude of the misunderstanding. "Sergeant Mitchell," Davies called out. "Report your status." Thomas, still in handcuffs but maintaining perfect military bearing, responded clearly. "Sir, I apprehended a security threat who approached my position aggressively." I am being detained by police who were not aware of my identity or mission. The crowd of tourists had grown to several hundred people, all filming the unprecedented confrontation with their phones. Social media was exploding with videos of armed soldiers facing off against police officers outside Buckingham Palace. News organizations were scrambling to understand what was happening. Sergeant Major Thompson positioned his soldiers in a tactical formation that was both defensive and intimidating. Each soldier maintained perfect discipline, weapons held in ready position but not aimed at anyone. Their training and professionalism were evident in every movement, creating a stark contrast with the confused police officers. The detained suspect, whose identity was still unknown to most of the officers, watched the developing situation with growing alarm. What had started as a planned diversion had evolved into something far beyond his organization's expectations. He began to realize that his capture might have triggered responses they had never anticipated. Commander Harrison arrived from the palace, flanked by additional royal protection officers. His presence added another layer of authority to an already complex situation. "Detective Collins," he said formally, "you are holding one of my soldiers who is acting under direct orders to protect the royal family. This detention constitutes interference with national security operations." The police officers found themselves in an impossible position. They had followed standard procedures in making the arrest, but those procedures had never contemplated a situation involving royal protection duties. None of their training had prepared them for a confrontation with military authorities. Davies made his position clear. "I am ordering the immediate release of my soldier. Any continued detention will be considered an act of aggression against Her Majesty's forces." The threat was politely worded, but unmistakably serious. The military was prepared to take whatever action was necessary to protect their soldier. Detective Collins tried to establish communication with her superiors, but the radio networks were jammed with confused reports from multiple agencies. The lack of clear command structure for handling military-police conflicts was becoming painfully obvious to everyone involved. The crowd pressed closer, sensing drama and eager to capture historic footage. Police struggled to maintain perimeter security while dealing with the military confrontation. The situation was rapidly spiraling beyond anyone's ability to control through normal procedures. News helicopters appeared overhead, broadcasting live footage of the standoff to millions of viewers. The image of armed soldiers facing police officers outside Buckingham Palace was being transmitted around the world, creating diplomatic concerns and raising questions about British security protocols. Davies checked his watch and made a decision that would escalate the situation further. "You have 60 seconds to release my soldier, or I will consider this a hostile act requiring appropriate military response." The countdown had begun, and everyone present understood that they were witnessing something that would change police-military relations forever. The actual suspect, forgotten in the larger drama, made a desperate attempt to escape during the confusion. His movement triggered immediate response from both police and military personnel, adding another dangerous element to an already volatile situation that was about to reach its breaking point. The escape attempt by the original suspect created instant chaos that finally broke the deadlock between police and military forces. Both groups immediately recognized the real threat and shifted their focus from confronting each other to apprehending the fleeing individual. The moment of cooperation began to reveal the truth behind the entire incident. Private Williams, despite his inexperience, reacted with textbook precision. He tackled the escaping suspect within 20 meters, demonstrating the combat effectiveness that made the Queen's Guard one of the world's elite military units. The professional manner of the takedown impressed even the skeptical police officers. Detective Collins seized the moment of clarity to take control of the situation. "Everyone stop," she shouted with authority that cut through the noise. "We need to sort this out properly. There's obviously been a serious misunderstanding here, and we're all on the same side." Lieutenant Colonel Davies recognized the opportunity for de-escalation. He ordered his soldiers to lower their weapons while maintaining readiness. The gesture was small but significant, showing his willingness to resolve the situation through dialogue rather than confrontation. The detained suspect was now in custody of both police and military personnel. A quick search revealed surveillance equipment, encrypted communication devices, and documents that confirmed he was part of the organized crime group Detective Collins had been investigating. The evidence validated both the police investigation and Sergeant Mitchell's actions. Commander Harrison stepped forward to provide crucial context. This individual was identified as part of a coordinated surveillance operation targeting palace security. Sergeant Mitchell was acting under heightened security protocols when he apprehended him. The detention was completely justified. The revelation changed everything. Police officers who had been treating Thomas as a criminal suddenly realized they had arrested a soldier who had prevented a serious security breach. The embarrassment was visible on their faces as they began to understand the implications of their mistake. Davies approached the police officers with diplomatic precision. "I understand you are following your procedures, but those procedures don't account for royal protection operations. We need to establish better communication protocols to prevent this from happening again." Detective Collins removed the handcuffs from Sergeant Mitchell personally, offering a formal apology. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, Sergeant. Your actions were completely appropriate and our response was based on incomplete information." Thomas accepted the apology with military grace. "No harm done, Detective. We all want the same thing, to keep people safe. Today just showed us we need to work together better." His professionalism in the face of public humiliation impressed everyone present. The crowd of tourists and media representatives watched the resolution with fascination. What had appeared to be a dangerous confrontation between police and military forces was transforming into a demonstration of how professionals could work through complex misunderstandings. The original suspect was now properly secured and being questioned by both Detective Collins and Royal Protection officers. Initial interrogation revealed details about a larger operation that had been planned for later that week. Thomas's quick action had prevented what could have been a major security incident. News organizations struggled to report the story accurately as details emerged. The initial narrative of police arresting a royal guard was being replaced by a more complex story about interagency cooperation and the prevention of a serious crime. Davies addressed his soldiers with pride. "Today you demonstrated the professionalism and restraint that makes this unit special. You protected one of your own while avoiding unnecessary conflict with civilian authorities. Well done." The soldiers maintained their disciplined formation, but allowed themselves small smiles of satisfaction. The Metropolitan Police supervisors arrived to conduct their own assessment of the situation. They recognized the need for better training and communication protocols when dealing with royal security operations. The incident would become a case study in police academies for years to come. Commander Harrison coordinated with Davies to establish immediate improvements in communication between palace security and local law enforcement. They agreed on direct communication channels and regular briefings to prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. As the situation wound down, Thomas returned to his guard post, straightening his uniform and resuming his ceremonial stance. To observers, it appeared as if nothing had happened, but everyone involved knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The incident was becoming a symbol of how different agencies could overcome miscommunication and work together effectively. What had started as a dangerous confrontation was ending as a demonstration of professional cooperation and mutual respect. 3 months after the incident, the ripple effects were still being felt throughout British law enforcement and military circles. The confrontation outside Buckingham Palace had exposed critical gaps in communication between agencies responsible for national security, leading to comprehensive reforms that strengthened the entire system. Detective Inspector Collins received a commendation for her role in de-escalating the situation and successfully concluding the investigation into the criminal organization. The suspects arrested that day provided intelligence that led to the dismantling of an international crime syndicate with operations across Europe. Sergeant Thomas Mitchell was promoted to color sergeant and assigned to train new recruits in situational awareness and interagency cooperation. His calm professionalism during the crisis became a model for how Royal Guards should handle complex security situations while maintaining their ceremonial duties. Lieutenant Colonel Davies worked closely with Metropolitan Police leadership to develop new protocols for situations involving royal protection operations. The joint training programs they established became internationally recognized as best practices for military-civilian law enforcement. Cooperation. The Quick Reaction Force was officially recognized for their disciplined response during the crisis. Their ability to deploy rapidly while maintaining restraint under pressure demonstrated the high standards of the British military. Several soldiers received individual commendations for their professionalism. Officer James Peterson, whose misunderstanding had triggered the entire incident, used the experience to become an advocate for better training. He enrolled in additional courses on royal protocol and security operations, eventually becoming a specialist in handling complex law enforcement situations. Commander Harrison implemented a revolutionary communication system that provided real-time coordination between palace security, local police, and military units. The system prevented several potential incidents in subsequent months and was adopted by other countries protecting their royal families. The tourist area around Buckingham Palace was redesigned to improve security while maintaining public access. The changes were subtle but effective, creating better sightlines for guards and clearer emergency response routes. For law enforcement and military personnel, the international criminal organization that had planned the original operation was completely dismantled within 6 months. Evidence gathered during the investigation revealed planned attacks on multiple high-profile targets across Europe. The prevention of their operation saved countless lives and protected several important cultural sites. Media coverage of the incident evolved from sensational reporting about military police confrontation to thoughtful analysis of security cooperation. The story became a case study in journalism schools about the importance of understanding complex situations before drawing conclusions. Thomas Mitchell often reflected on that Tuesday morning that changed his career. Standing at his post, he maintained the same vigilance and professionalism, but now he was part of a more connected and effective security network. The experience had made him a better soldier and a better protector of the monarchy. The relationship between the Metropolitan Police and Royal Protection Services reached new levels of cooperation and mutual respect. Joint training exercises became routine, and communication protocols were tested regularly to ensure smooth coordination during emergencies. Detective Collins was promoted to Detective Chief Inspector and given command of a new unit specializing in threats against national infrastructure. Her experience managing the Royal Guard incident qualified her to handle complex investigations involving multiple agencies and international implications. The reforms implemented after the incident were studied by security professionals worldwide. The British model of integrating military and civilian law enforcement became a template for other nations seeking to improve their own protective services. Public opinion about the incident was overwhelmingly positive once the full story emerged. Citizens appreciated seeing their security forces work together effectively to protect both the royal family and the general public. Trust in law enforcement and military institutions actually increased as a result. Thomas still served as a royal guard, but his duties had expanded to include training and consultation on security protocols. He took pride in knowing that his actions during those chaotic minutes had contributed to making the entire system stronger and more effective. The legacy of that Tuesday morning continued to influence British security operations. What had begun as a misunderstanding had evolved into a comprehensive improvement of national security capabilities. The incident proved that even mistakes could lead to positive changes when handled by dedicated professionals committed to serving their country. Years later, when new guards asked about the famous incident, Thomas would tell them that the most important lesson was that everyone involved was trying to do the right thing. The confrontation arose not from malice or incompetence, but from good people working with incomplete information. The resolution demonstrated that cooperation and communication could overcome any misunderstanding.